The truth is, I don't need anyone. I'm fine. I'm strong. I've made it through everything until I couldn't breathe because of an old story I never told. In The Gifts of Imperfection, Brené Brown, a leading expert on emotional vulnerability and human connection, wrote, "We don't have to do all of it alone. We were never meant to. The idea that we are supposed to be self-sufficient and handle everything on our own is not only unrealistic, it's dangerous. When we shut down our need for connection, we shut down a fundamental part of what it means to be human. Healing doesn't happen in isolation. It happens when we are seen, when we are heard, and when we allow ourselves to be held emotionally, spiritually, sometimes even physically, by others who care. It takes courage to say, 'I'm struggling.' But that's the beginning of true strength. This isn't just a reminder. It's a vital truth that many of us have forgotten. Healing doesn't happen in isolation. It begins the moment we allow ourselves to be seen, to be heard, and to be accompanied." 1. Redefining healing. It doesn't mean no longer hurting. We often believe that healing means feeling nothing at all. No pain, no memories, no more thoughts about it. As if one day, when we're finally strong enough or mature enough, the old wounds will simply disappear. No longer stirring something in us, no longer making us sigh when an old song plays, no longer causing that ache in our chest when someone brings up something similar. But the truth is, healing isn't erasing. Healing is when you can look back and no longer feel the need to turn away. The pain doesn't vanish. It slowly becomes a part of you, a part you've learned to carry with compassion. You don't get over the past. You simply grow strong enough to live with it, without letting it lead you anymore. We often pressure ourselves with the belief, I have to be okay. I need to forget. I should be unaffected. That's what healing means. And that pressure quietly teaches many of us to hide our pain, to mistake silence for strength, and to feel ashamed whenever we find ourselves still hurting, even if just for a moment. But consider this. If you had a scar on your skin, would the fact that it no longer hurts mean you were never injured? Or would it mean that you bled once, you hurt deeply, and you took care of the wound, tended to it gently, and allowed it to heal through time and tenderness? The same goes for emotional wounds. Just because you don't think about it every day doesn't mean it's gone. It's still there. But now, you've learned how to live with it, to speak to it, and to let it become a part of the wiser, stronger version of you. Healing doesn't mean you'll never feel pain again. It means that when the pain returns, as it sometimes will, you're no longer afraid. You no longer need to run, hide, or blame. You can sit with yourself, take a deep breath, and say, I understand why I feel this way, and I deserve to be treated gently, even when I'm not okay. Redefining healing allows you to see yourself with more kindness and frees you from the pressure to be fully recovered in some perfect way. You don't need to be flawless to be worthy of love. You don't need to be pain-free to be enough. You just need to be honest with yourself and brave enough to begin little by little. And sometimes that beginning is simply accepting, I'm still healing, and that's completely okay. Reflecting on the journey, understand, observe, act. If emotional healing is a long and layered journey, then day 5 is not the final stop. It's the moment you pause, turn around, and truly realize you've started a journey inward, and that alone is no small feat. Over the past 4 days, you've named feelings you once denied. You've faced defense mechanisms you thought were simply part of your personality. You've dared to acknowledge wounds that once made you believe healing was impossible. And now, as you stand at the intersection of the old and the new, between the unconscious and the conscious, between instinct and choice, it's time to revisit the 3 essential pillars of any healing journey. Understand, observe, act. And to truly live through those steps, you'll need one more element, quiet but essential, connection. 1. Understand. Naming feelings is an act of inner rescue. Understanding isn't about rationalizing. It's about honest emotional awareness. It's not about finding your identity. It's about pausing long enough to tell yourself the truth. I feel sad. I'm hurting. I feel like I was never chosen. We're born with the ability to feel, but we grow up in environments that teach us to shut that down. We're told to be quiet when we cry, told to toughen up when we're scared, rewarded for not whining when we're hurt. Over time, we lose the ability to name what's happening inside us. Daniel J. Siegel, clinical professor of psychiatry at UCLA and co-author of The Whole Brain Child, said, "To master our feelings, we must name them." It sounds simple, but this statement has deep neurological implications. When we name an emotion, the prefrontal cortex, the part of our brain responsible for reasoning and self-regulation, is activated. In other words, just by acknowledging a feeling, we begin to regulate our internal state. But more importantly, naming our emotions is an act of honesty. When you stop labeling things as "I'm tired," or "just a little down," or "it's fine," and instead say, "I feel abandoned," you're no longer hiding from yourself. You might not know what to do next, but at least you're no longer wearing a mask. Dr. Gabor Mate, physician, trauma expert, and author When the Body Says No, once wrote, "Trauma is not what happens to you. Trauma is what happens inside you as a result of what happened to you, the disconnection from your true self." This is one of the rare insights that not only describes trauma, but unlocks the truth. Healing is not about finding answers. It's about allowing yourself to feel. Many try to understand why they were hurt or trace the roots of their pain. But transformation doesn't lie in the explanation. It lies in allowing that sorrow to exist without pushing it away. 2, to observe, not passivity, but the power to not react. We often react before we're even aware. When hurt, we get angry. When rejected, we withdraw. Under pressure, we try to control everything. These reactions, if left unobserved, become patterns. And patterns, if unrecognized, become destiny. Viktor E. Frankl, Austrian psychiatrist and founder of logotherapy, wrote in Man's Search for Meaning, "Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom." Let's break that down. All emotions arise from stimuli. Reaction is not automatic. We can pause. That pause is where we stop repeating old stories. When someone who has felt abandoned reacts by clinging tightly or cutting off entirely, they're not choosing, they're repeating. But if they observe the emotion, they might say, "Oh, here's that old response again. But this time I'll just stay. I don't have to act on it." That moment of observation is the first step in breaking the cycle of emotion, behavior, consequence. You don't react the same way. You breathe, you wait, you choose. And in that choice, change begins. To observe is to create space where freedom can live. 3, act. Every small choice is commitment. Understanding and observing are powerful, but without action, transformation stays theoretical. Healing is a systemic change of emotions, thoughts, habits. To change the system, you must start behaving differently. James Clear, author of Atomic Habits, wrote, "Every action you take is a vote for the person you wish to become." This is profound because it reminds us that you don't have to be someone completely new. You just have to behave a little differently. Today, right now, each time you breathe instead of explode, write instead of react, say no instead of people please, you're voting for a healthier version of yourself. Healing doesn't live in knowledge. It lives in behavior. You can read 100 books or listen to dozens of podcasts. But if tomorrow you still react the same way, no real healing has occurred. However, if tomorrow you sit quietly for just 3 minutes, just to breathe, and you repeat that for 100 days, then your entire nervous system begins to believe one thing: you're now in a safer environment. Action doesn't have to be dramatic. It just needs to be repeated, with intention, kindness, and care. 4, connect. You don't have to do this alone. The deepest pain often isn't the event itself. It's the feeling that no one was there when it happened. That's why healing becomes possible when we let others in. Dr. Breen Brown, social work researcher and professor at the University of Houston, wrote in The Gifts of Imperfection, "We're not meant to heal in isolation. Connection is the foundation of recovery. Many believe strength means doing everything alone, but real strength is the courage to say, I need someone at the right time in the right way." You don't need a large group. You just need one person who doesn't leave when you share your truth. Connection isn't about finding someone who understands every part of you. It's about finding someone who stays even when you're still struggling. A therapist, a friend, a community where you can write down what you once only dared to think. Sometimes, just someone being quietly here is enough to remind you you're not the strangest person in the world. Understand when you pause and name what's truly happening inside you. Observe when you choose not to react the same way again. Act when you take small, deliberate steps filled with compassion. Connect when you allow someone to stay, even when you're not yet okay. Accepting the return, old wounds and a new version of you. On the journey of healing, one of the most uncomfortable and confusing moments is when emotions you thought were resolved suddenly come back. It might be the anxiety you thought you had learned to manage, the anger you believed you had understood, or the feeling of abandonment you thought you had already forgiven. When these old wounds resurface, many people instantly conclude, I've failed. But if you truly understand the nature of healing, you'll realize this. The return of pain is not a failure. It's a sign of depth. It means you've entered a new emotional layer, where the old wound is returned to hurt you. It's returning so you can meet it from a more mature version of yourself. Healing isn't linear, it's a spiral. Many people mistakenly believe that healing is like climbing a ladder, step by step, no looking back, only moving upward. But the truth isn't that simple. In both therapeutic practice and lived experience, healing is much more like a spiral, where you return to the same issue, the same pain, but at a deeper level. For example, in your first year of emotional work, you may notice that you often get angry when you're not heard. In the second year, the anger fades, but you begin to feel a deeper sadness. By the third year, you realize what you were truly missing all along was a feeling of being seen since childhood. Each spiral brings you back to a familiar place, but this time with greater awareness and emotional depth. This explains why, even after years of therapy, people still find themselves falling back into old emotions. But if you look closely, you'll notice you now have new tools, new responses, and a new sense of compassion. Things you didn't have before. Re-experiencing is not re-enacting. There's a major difference between re-experiencing and reenacting. Reenacting means unconsciously repeating old patterns, reacting with anger, shutting down, or try to control, without awareness. Re-experiencing, on the other hand, is when an old emotion resurfaces, but this time you notice it, witness it, and choose not to respond in the old way. This is when observation becomes meaningful. Instead of blaming yourself, here I go again, you pause and ask, how long can I sit with this emotion right now? What do I need from myself in this moment so I don't fall into old habits? What would my more mature self do to care for me now? Re-experiencing an old wound is not a setback. It's an opportunity to reaffirm that you're living differently now, even just a little bit. Recovery isn't a straight line. In therapy, many people spiral into panic when they feel like they're relapsing after a good stretch. But what they don't realize is, in the cycles of neurorecovery, emotional waves returning is completely natural. Our bodies and nervous systems don't transform instantly. They adjust in layers, and every layer needs to be acknowledged, understood, and gently tended to. Wounds tied to developmental trauma, like emotional neglect in childhood, don't go away just because you become aware of them. They soften, and each stage of your personal growth will invite you to revisit them again, but from a new angle. For instance, when you're single, You may feel like you've made peace with growing up without a father, but the moment you have a child, you feel anger or fear, because for the first time, you understand what a father's presence could have meant. When you're promoted, you believe you've overcome your self-doubt. But in big meetings, your hands shake and you feel like a little kid being judged, because now you're facing authority in a way you never had it before. These moments are not failures. They're gateways to the next stage of healing. Compassion, the lifeblood of healing. If you can't stop the old emotions from returning, then the only thing you must learn is this. Don't punish yourself when they do. Self-blame, shame, feelings of failure. These reactions only pull you away from the healing path you've worked so hard to build. What you need instead is compassion. Tell yourself, just because this emotion is back doesn't mean I'm starting over. I'm different this time. I stayed instead of running away. If I choose not to react the same way, then I've already changed. Compassion is the lifeblood that sustains long-term healing. No one can walk this journey with sheer willpower alone. You need gentleness. You need patience. You need permission to get it wrong and try again. You need to embrace both the part of you that's hurting again and the part that is slowly recovering. Questions to ask when old wounds return. To avoid repeating the past, you need to develop a habit. Pause and ask meaningful questions. Here are a few to carry with you whenever old feelings rise. What am I really feeling right now? What's my first instinct, and where have I seen it before? What have I learned from this emotion in the past? What would the more grown version of me choose to do now? Who or what do I need in this moment so I don't feel alone? Just by stopping to ask, you've already broken away from the old pattern. And every time you do, you're no longer being driven. You're becoming the one who chooses a direction. Conclusion: repetition isn't failure, it's an invitation. The return of old wounds doesn't mean you did something wrong. It simply means you're now safe enough to touch the deeper layer. You've gone far enough that the spiral has brought you back, not to make you suffer, but to finally heal from the root. You may not be perfect, but you're no longer where you once started. You may still tremble, but you're no longer falling alone into the void. You've changed, even if the feelings are old, and that alone is the proof you're on the right path. The letter never sent, to myself from 5 years ago. Why I'm writing this letter? I'm writing this letter not to vent, and not to apologize to anyone. I'm writing it to return to a version of myself I had once forgotten. Someone who held everything in because they thought they had to be okay. Someone who held back tears for fear of being called weak. Someone who tried to be more lovable, more worthy, just to be kept in someone's heart. Writing to me from 5 years ago is writing to the one I once abandoned, not through actions, but through silence, by turning away from every emotion. I don't wish to change the past, but I do want to say thank you for not giving up. This letter is for the only person who truly knew how deeply I was hurting and still kept going without expecting anyone else to understand. The letter. Dear me from 5 years ago. I don't know where you are right now, on a crowded bus in a tiny rented room, or sitting quietly in your favorite coffee shop. But wherever you are, I know one thing for sure. You're trying. You, 5 years ago, stayed up countless nights, not to work, but to figure out why your heart felt so empty. You opened an old note, wrote a few sad lines, then deleted them, afraid of being too much. You once heard someone close say, "You gotta stay positive," and from that moment on, you learned to bury everything negative deep inside. I remember how hard you tried to keep it together, so no one could see the exhaustion in your eyes. You kept working, kept smiling, kept looking fine in front of everyone. But no one knew that every time you were overlooked, dismissed, or had to pretend you were okay, you lost a little more trust in yourself. I know there were days when you didn't want to keep going, not because something big happened, but because it felt like no one really saw you, like your presence didn't make a difference. I'm not writing this letter to comfort you. I'm writing it to hold your hand, even if only through words. To tell you something no one said back then. You don't have to hold it in anymore. I see you. I'm here. I won't promise things get easier. There will still be days when your mind feels tangled, nights when you'll just want to disappear for a while. But I promise, I'm learning how to sit with those feelings instead of running from them. I'm learning, little by little, to choose what's truly kind to me. I don't want you to think that 5 years later is a better version. Because the truth is, I wouldn't be here without you. Everything you endured, everything you held back, everything you carried alone, laid the foundation for me to learn how to be gentler with myself. And if right now you're still wondering, am I enough? Then let me whisper this back to you. You don't have to be anything more to deserve love. Just being here is already enough. Closing. I don't need you to forgive me for being silent for so long. But if you can, let me hold you just once with all the gratitude I have. Thank you for staying. Thank you for not disappearing. Thank you for being brave when no one noticed. And thank you, because of you, I get to write this today with a heart that has finally begun to soften. With love, me, 5 years later. Healing isn't about forgetting, nor is it about erasing the past. Healing is when you can look back at the most fragile version of yourself with gentler eyes. It's when you stop blaming yourself for the times you weren't okay. It's when you realize, as long as you're still here with yourself, it's never too late to begin again. If you ever had a letter you never sent or something left unspoken in your heart, share your story, your feelings, or a lesson you've learned in the comments below. What you write today might help someone feel a little less alone. Don't forget to leave a comment, subscribe to the channel, and share this video if this journey has meant something to you or to someone around you. Thank you for staying with us until the very end. We're always here with you in the moments you need to be heard most.